we can look at historical records. We can look at how the S&P 500 has done since like 1929 to the modern day. But if you think about it, like so much has changed in our economy from 1929 to 2024. That's almost 100 years. And, we've gone from very rudimentary airplanes to, supersonic aircraft. We have the largest company in the world is a chip manufacturer. And if you went back even 50 years, you probably 50 years, but 100 years, definitely. If you said the largest company in the world is a chip manufacturer, they say, which one, Doritos or Lay's? That's...
I don't even think they had Doritos back then, probably.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Hey, listeners, today on the podcast, we have a couple questions that came in, mostly on email, podcast@militarymoneymanual.com, and also Instagram @militarymoneymanual. And we're going to address them one by one. Here we go.
All right. So mailbag question. It's been a while since we've done one. First one, Spencer, do I need to combine the accounts, or is there any benefit of combining accounts into one account instead of having like 10 accounts with $1,000 in them? Combine it into one account for the benefit of compound growth.
Well, Jamie, I'm going to take you back to maybe elementary school, middle school here. I want to see if you can remember, Jamie, the distributive property of multiplication. Do you remember that one? So that's like A times B plus C is the same as A times B plus A plus C, or times C. So, okay, long way of saying that. But if you Google distributive property multiplication, it'll explain what I'm trying to get at here, which is you don't have to combine accounts to have compounding interest work more. And the easiest way I can think about this is, let's say you have $1,000, right? And it grows at 10% a year. Jamie, $1,000, 10% a year. At the end of a year, how much money have you made and what's your account value?
$100.
$100. And your account value is $1,100. Okay, great. Now think about it.
Make me nervous, man. Don't ask me math questions.
I know, man. Now imagine you had 10 separate accounts and each one of them had $100 in it, right? So if each one, there's 10 accounts, each one has $100 in it. So you still have $1,000. It's just in 10 separate accounts. Each one grows at 10% a year. So the first account becomes 110. The second account becomes 110. The third account becomes 110. All right, well, you can see where I'm getting at here. But if you have 10 accounts that grow from 100 to 110, at the end of the year, you've made $100 and your total account value is at $1,100.
I don't know why I feel like this is a math quiz. This was not my question. All right, back off picking on me a little bit.
I know math. I know it's not a 60-1 rule, so us pilots are going to really struggle with it. But yeah, so the point is that like when you leave the military, you don't have to roll your TSP into your IRA, into your 401k so that it grows faster. That's just not an understanding of how compounding interest and how interest rates work and how money grows. You don't have to if Bill Gates has $1 billion or he has 10 accounts with $100 million in each one, it doesn't matter. Like it's still all going to grow at the same rate.
I guess that's assuming that all of the accounts are invested in the same thing that's going to be the same return. So if, for example, you're talking about rolling over a spouse's 401k into an IRA and they had crappy options with high fees, then maybe it would make sense so that you can get it more aligned with your strategy, but it's not a math problem for compound growth to combine it.
Yep, not a math problem. It's more of a expense ratio. You could also just do it because you're sick of looking at multiple accounts. Like I totally get. Yeah, I think that's a totally valid reason. So if you have, a small amount in your TSP, when you get out of the service, you're like, dude, I just want to be done with it and roll it over to my IRA. Go for it. Just make sure Roth goes into Roth, traditional goes into traditional. Jamie, that actually leads to our next question, which is, should I move out of the TSP for a lower fee investment? Or another way to ask this is, if the TSP is charging me 0.05 expense ratio and Vanguard is charging me a 0.03% expense ratio, is that enough of a reason to move?
So just up front, I'm going to say, no, it's not that big of a deal. Costs are important. They do impact your growth. And it's one of the few things we can control as we pick our investments. But at some point, it's not that much of a difference. And you're wasting your time trying to make it so perfect. And in fact, you might miss more money than you would ever make by making this change just in the day that you're making the transfer. So Spencer, I know you ran some numbers here. You want to walk us through just how small of a difference this would make for a military family?
Yeah, there's definitely diminishing returns here, Jamie. So again, to reiterate, costs do matter, but at some point they start mattering a lot less when you can, pretty much get your expense ratio below 0.1%, so 10 basis points. Let's take $10,000 per year, invested over 30 years at a 7% return. Over 30 years, so after 30 years, you'll have $944,000. Pretty good. You only invested $300,000. So it's pretty amazing how fast things grow. If the fund has a 0.05% expense ratio, you'll spend about $8,400 on fees over the 30 years. That's not bad. If you get the fund down to 0.03%, you'll spend $5,000 on fees. So yes, you do save $3,400 by moving from a fund that has a 0.05 expense ratio to a 0.03% expense ratio. But that's over 30 years. So that's less than $114 per year. If your plan requires that you have $114 per year over a 30-year time period, or else it all blows up and you don't become financially independent, then you need to come up with a new plan. I ran the numbers as well for a quarter, so like a 0.25% expense ratio. That's a $41,000 fee. So now instead of getting to the end of your 30-year investing with $944,000, you're getting to the end of your investment period with $903,000. So where did that extra $41,000 go? It went to the person managing your investment. So I think that's when we say like costs matter, is when you start looking at those super high expense ratios. That's when it really eats into your returns. And that's when it really matters. And there's substantial savings if you can get moved from, that 0.25% expense ratio fund to a 0.05 or a 0.03. But anything below 0.10, 0.10% is probably reasonable. And I wouldn't super stress about it. I know a lot of people are super excited about the Fidelity funds are 0% expense ratio. But when you're comparing a 0.03% Vanguard fund to a 0% expense ratio Fidelity fund, come on, guys. That's going to wash out over the next 30 and 50 years, and you're just not going to notice that.
But a 1% or a 1.25% expense ratio or a 5% front load fee, those are the things that we really want to be careful with and avoid. Those will significantly impact your growth.
Absolutely. So Jamie, I just ran the same equation, $10,000, 30 years, 7%. And I put in a 1% expense ratio into there. So now instead of ending the 30-year period with almost $1 million with $944,000, you're ending it with $790,000. So you gave your fund manager $150,000 over the 30-year period, almost $5,000 a year. That's a big difference. That can make, that can make a huge difference. So that's why when we encourage people to get into low cost, automatic, diversified, simple index funds, you've got to focus on that low cost part. You don't want, there's S&P 500 funds out there that have higher than a 0.05% expense ratio. I just don't understand how they can justify that.
What are they doing?
What are they doing over there? Exactly.
Marketing, maybe.
Yeah, you got to sell the funds. So, okay, Jamie, another question here. I opened a Roth IRA with Vanguard and I transferred in my first $500. First of all, to the person who sent that in, awesome idea, opening up a Roth IRA, moving some money into it. For 2024, you can move up to $7,000 into your Roth IRA, and you can do that until April 15th, tax day of next year. So 2025, you can backfill basically your 2024 contribution. But Jamie, if you open up your Roth IRA with Vanguard, you transfer in your first $500, what do you do now?
So this is a common thing that gets missed is it's an account that you can transfer money to, but you actually have to invest that money. And so just talking Vanguard specifically, like the question was about, I personally do this where each month I contribute automatically. So it's a two-step process. I transfer the money from my bank account to my Vanguard, and it's like a cash holding pen is kind of a way to think of it. There's like a little bit of a cash temporary storage. The next day, it automatically buys like a VOO or VTI or whatever your philosophy aligns with. But you have to both transfer the money automatically and then automatically buy the ETF or the share that you want to invest in. So it's both a transfer and a purchase. You can't just transfer it. Well, you can. It's just going to be sitting in cash, not making any money for you. So great job getting started. Now you want to make sure that you're actually getting it put to work with an investment. And it's easy to do automatically with Vanguard specifically. You can Google how to automatically contribute, how to automatically invest, and it'll walk you through the steps on that. And there's a lot of good resources out there, including Personal Finance Club and others that have step-by-step guides on that as well. But great job. Just make sure it's actually getting to work on investing it now. Okay, Spencer, I went through my spouse's 401k options at their new job. How do I know what to pick? It's a little different than the TSP advice that you guys talk about on the podcast.
I think the best thing to do is it really comes down to what is your personal investment philosophy and making sure that you're aligned on all your investments with your personal investing philosophy. So for me, I'm very much of a Bogleheads investor. I like we already said, low cost, automatic, diversified, simple investment. Index funds primarily. I like to track global market cap weighted indexes, usually kind of with the Bogleheads 3-fund portfolio. So I have some US stocks, I have some international stocks, and then I have some bonds. I don't have a whole lot of bonds right now, but that's kind of how I allocate my investments. And then I just make sure that I'm not overweight in any one category across all my accounts. So that's when it gets a little bit tricky. Not tricky, but you just have to add it up. So you can either use software like Personal Capital. I think they're called Empower now. You can also use Kubera, kubera.com, Kubera. I just use a spreadsheet. So I just stick in there, hey, I know the C fund is S&P 500, the S fund is, the rest of the US stock market. And I know that translates. So if I have VTI, that's, C plus S fund. If I have VXUS, that's the Vanguard Total International Stock Market Index Fund. That's the same, almost the same as the I fund, or will be pretty soon. So you just want to make sure that in the TSP that, or in the 401k that your spouse is using, that you've set it up such that it's invested in a way that aligns with your values. If you're a life cycle fund, there's probably a target date retirement fund that you could use in their 401k. But yeah, check the fees, make sure that the expense ratio is low, and make sure that you're contributing enough so that you're receiving the match. A lot of people will have, just like in the BRS, they'll get a 5 or maybe 10% match from their employer, depending on how much they contribute. And so make sure that you're at least getting that, because that's 100% free return right there. Some people work for employers where their employer just contributes to their 401k without any contributions from them. So all of our friends who fly for major airlines, they get 16% or sometimes even higher of their pay just deposited into their 401k.
Yeah, but I can shop at the commissary still, so I'm definitely winning on that deal. I'm pretty sure. Also, Spencer, I was going to mention a great point with the matching dollars. I think, if you're getting matching and you contribute in the 401k only to the matching, because it's not as many great options as what you do in alignment with your philosophy, I think that's okay. If you want to focus on maxing your TSP and your IRA and then any extra goes back to the 401k, that's fine too. But look for whatever is closest to your personal investing philosophy. So if, say 90% of your portfolio is S&P 500 funds, there's probably something there in the 401k that offers something like that, or a total stock market fund. Pay attention to the fees, because they're sneaky in 401k, and sometimes you don't have as many options as you'd have on the outside, depending on the company. All right, Spencer, next question. I actually talked to an E4. I was TDY a couple weeks ago. And so this was an in-person question, and we were just chatting. We were talking about good Mexican restaurants in town. And I said, hey, by the way, what are you doing with your TSP? And she said, I'm doing 6%. Is that good? Am I doing well? What would you say to an E4 that's at 6% in the TSP so far, but unsure if that's good or not?
Well, that's interesting to me, because that's higher than the automatic 5%, right?
Yeah.
So that means that they've actually logged in and set the percentage. So yeah, I'd say that's really good. I'd love to continue to have a conversation about how is the TSP invested, because that can be if they're an E4, then they're probably came in under BRS, so they're probably in the life cycle fund.
Yeah, and it was still a life cycle fund. She had not changed that. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I'd be pretty stoked for them. I'd want to talk to them about what their goals, long-term goals were, but 6% for an E4, that's a fantastic place to start. And if you're an E4 and you're out there and you're listening to this and you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing into my TSP, this is a great motivation to log into my pay and see what you're contributing. And I love the new feature. I think this is hilarious. But if you knock your TSP contribution percentage below 5%, on January 1st of every year, the DFAST computers reset and they put you back to 5%. And I just think that is like the most idiot proof. I'm not going to name branches, but that is the most idiot proof system. And I just love that. So now people are they're going to leave, they're going to be enlisted or officers for a couple of years, maybe even a decade. Then they're going to end up leaving, going to do something else. They're never going to check their TSP. And all of a sudden they're going to be like, holy cow, how did I get $50,000 in here? And it's because you were automatically contributing all those years. I love that. I love that feature of the BRS.
Yeah, I love the extra 1% for this E4 because maybe it's a supervisor or a friend that was like, hey, each year or each promotion, like go in and add another percent to your TSP. There's probably some logic behind that, which is just a really good foundation for what's coming in the future. And if she continues to do 1% more every calendar year or every promotion or every time and grade bump, she's going to be doing well by the time she's ready to leave the military or at traditional retirement age for sure.
I mean, especially when you're a younger officer or younger enlisted, like your promotions happen a lot faster and your time and grade pay increases, they happen faster or every 2 years, just like everybody else. So, one thing, it might be nice just to kind of set a milestone and be like, hey, every time you have a birthday, bump your TSP up by 1%. Every time you get a promotion, bump your TSP up by 1%. Every time you hit a 2-year time in service, bump your TSP up by 10%. And before you know it, you've been in for 5 years, you'll probably be up close to like 15 or 20%. And you won't really notice it because your pay will have been increasing over time. And you're just slowly slipping, a little bit more of a percentage every year into it.
A quick side story about her is we actually were talking and she's sharing a house with a roommate on base and pocketing some of her BH. And she was really excited about how she was saving, so much money by having a roommate. That was awesome. So keep up the good work if you hear this. Is there any way around the Amex family restrictions with the cards? My fiance and I both opened up the Amex Platinums before learning about you guys. We went to go open Amex Gold the other day and put our wedding expenses on it to take advantage of the 90,000 point offer that was at the time they sent this question. But we were told we're not eligible for the bonus because we already had a platinum. Are we SOL or can we eventually get the gold and the green bonuses?
Tough question. I'm going to say it depends, maybe.
Probably SOL, I think, is where I would lean.
I would operate on the understanding that because of the new Amex family language, and if you don't know what we're talking about and you're in the credit card game, just Google Amex family language or go to my website and search for it. But essentially what has happened is Amex has restricted the bonuses on their cards per family. So you can think of a family as the cards that earn those types of points. So the Hilton cards, that's a family. The Delta cards, that's a family. Marriott cards is a family. And then the Amex membership reward cards are a family. So that's the green, the gold, and the platinum card. We did talk about the Amex family language restrictions in episode number 120. So you can go back and listen to that one. But essentially what they've done is if you have the higher tier card, so the higher annual fee card in the family, you are not eligible for the lower tier welcome bonuses. So that changes the strategy. Whereas you used to be able to just start at the top, start with a platinum card and work your way down to the green and the gold. Now, if you want to maximize your benefits, start with the green, then get a gold, then get a platinum, earn the welcome bonus as you work your way up the tiers. After you've earned the welcome bonus on the Amex Platinum, you probably are at the 1 year mark anyways. You can go back and you can upgrade your Amex Green to another platinum, your Amex Gold to another platinum, and then you can do a direct application for another Amex Green, another Amex Gold, and just have those cards. Or after another year, you can upgrade more of them. And that's how you end up with like 10 Amex Platinum cards, or 8, like I've got right now. 7. Actually, I think I've got 7 right now. My player 2's got 1. Jamie, another question. My spouse is a traditional reservist. Are we eligible for annual fee waived cards?
Yeah, unfortunately, disappointing news for this listener that wrote in. She was very excited to have stumbled upon the podcast and learn all about the travel hacking and annual fee waived credit cards, but they're not going to apply for the normal traditional reservist. So if you're doing guard duty or reserve duty and it's typical 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, and you're not doing any long-term orders, nothing more than 30 days in the year, you are almost certainly not going to be eligible for an annual fee waived credit card. So you need long-term orders. You need to be active duty or long-term orders that would make you eligible for the MLA or Military Lending Act protection. The easiest way to check that, and we've talked about this a number of times, is to verify your status in the MLA database. And if you look that up, you can create an account, and then that will allow you to look for your information or your spouse's information, and it will say that you are or are not protected by the Military Lending Act protections. That's the only really way to guarantee that you're covered. I would venture to guess this person is not eligible. And since we didn't hear back from them, I'm guessing they probably discovered that when we referred them to the MLA website.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back to the show.
Hey, Spencer, I got a cousin that just graduated from high school and they're about to start basic training in a few months. Any ideas on a gift I should get him?
Yep, sure do, Jamie. The Military Money Manual, A Practical Guide to Financial Freedom, is a concise, easy to read, and practical guide to your military money. It's the book that I wish someone had handed me on my first day in the military. In the book, I explain the exact money tactics and investing strategies that can enable you to achieve financial independence while serving in the U.S. military. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and my website. It's hardcover, paperback, ebook, Kindle, and audiobook. You can get a special discount using promo code podcast on my website, shop.militarymoneymanual.com.
Spencer, what are your go-to cards for just regular spending, not buying flights or hotels or anything like that? Also, I'm stationed in Japan, so I don't benefit from U.S. restaurants on some of the cards either.
So this was a guy who was stationed in Japan, as you can tell from the question. And go-to cards for regular spending. Well, if you're overseas, you want to make sure that you're using a card that has no foreign transaction fees. So Japan actually has really good American Express acceptance almost everywhere. Family Mart, 7-Eleven, the Shinkansen bullet train, most of the hotels, like a lot of the restaurants, like everywhere that accepts a credit card is probably going to accept an American Express card. And all of the American Express cards that earn membership. Actually, I think all American Express cards have no foreign transaction fees other than maybe some of the lower tier cashback cards. I'll have to double check on that, but I'm pretty sure the platinum, the green, the gold, all the Hilton cards, the Marriott cards, they all have no foreign transaction fees. Yeah, so go-to card for just regular spending. When I'm overseas, I actually just use the Chase Sapphire Reserve usually as my go-to card. It's only 1% on most purchases, but it's 3x points on flights and restaurants when you're overseas. And the most important thing is no foreign transaction fees, and Visa is accepted. Like their commercials say, it's everywhere you want to be. It's accepted pretty much globally. I've had
Wow, you're old dating yourself on that one, I think.
I know. And then he says, I'm in Japan, so no benefits for US restaurants. But that doesn't matter because the Amex Gold Card actually gives you 4x points on global restaurants, not just US restaurants. So you don't have to worry about that. And most of the Japanese commissaries, so the DECA commissaries that are on US military installations in Japan, actually run through US credit card systems and count as US grocery stores, so US supermarkets. So you can get 4x points with your Amex Gold Card shopping there as well. So another reason to get the Amex Gold Card.
So what about something like the Chase Freedom Unlimited that would have, 1.5 times back? It's just not worth the hassle for you to carry it, or if you had it, you would have upgraded it to a Chase Sapphire Reserve?
It's fine for daily driver in the States, but if you're in Japan, I would be afraid of the foreign transaction fees. I do know some guys get their foreign transaction fees waived on the Chase Freedom cards, but I think it's under SCRA, possibly MLA. I'd have to look into that more.
That one does have a 3% fee, so you got to watch out for ones like that. You're trying to, really maximize your earning, like 1x earning on Chase card. It's 3x on travel, so that bullet train would probably get you 3x points on your Sapphire Reserve, stuff like that. So at some point, it's diminishing returns to really try to maximize every single purchase you make and just keep your life simple and easy. If that's your daily driver and you can get a lot of points, you can accumulate Chase points or Amex points and make a good redemption. Lots of transfer partners, things like that. So don't stress too much about fully maximizing every swipe of your card. I don't carry a card for gas personally, for example. I just put it on one of my cards, like the Chase Freedom Unlimited, or sometimes even my Platinum card or something, just because I don't care. I don't really have a better card for gas that makes that big of a difference. And I don't care to accumulate Hilton points at the AFES gas station.
You don't make your player to have a bunch of cards with little labels on them. Use this one for gas, use this one for groceries.
No, we keep it simple. If it's food, it's on the gold card. If it's flights, it's on the silver card, platinum card. And if you can't use Amex, then use your Chase Sapphire Reserve. And that's pretty much the philosophy we have on spending.
Love it. Yep. We've done something very similar where we've just completely simplified it. Like we don't worry about spending categories. We're just worried about earning bonuses. The big spending categories, the big purchases.
Yeah.
Like
Flights and food are the big ones for us for sure. All right, Spencer, I have a question. Next one is, if my spouse opened their account before we got married, does their fee get waived?
Tough question. Assuming they're not active duty, possibly. So the easiest way, like for American Express, if you're the active duty service member, you can add yourself to their account as an authorized user. and then you can apply for SCRA benefits, and then Amex will probably waive the annual fee on it. For Chase, probably not. So you could add the service member as an authorized user, then apply for SCRA benefits, but it's probably not going to work. So what I usually recommend to people is if their spouses have cards that they come into the marriage with, don't lose the points on them. So that's really important. So like if you have an Amex Platinum card, have the spouse open up an Amex Green card. Now they're in the MLA database. So the Amex Green card, annual fees are waived. All the points will be on the Amex Green card. Then you can close the Amex Platinum card account and then wait a couple days, couple weeks, and then you can reapply for any cards that you want to have your annual fees waived on. But the credit card companies are very strict. For the MLA, the Military Lending Act, the account must be established while the person is eligible for MLA benefits. And the way they check that is like Jamie talked about, the MLA database. And they're very strict about that. So just keep it simple, make their job easy, make your life easy. You don't want to fighting these fee waiver benefit fights. Like it must take the credit card companies like thousands, if not tens of thousands of hours every year with people like emailing orders in and being like, no, look, the date here, the date there. It's like, dude, make your life easy, make their life easy. Check the MLA database. And if you're listed as eligible, go hog wild, apply for that card, and the spouse can get their own card. We have to keep reiterating that if you're a military spouse, you're covered by the Military Lending Act database. You can get your Chase and Amex cards, annual fee waived.
All right, Spencer, how do you have more than 5 Amex cards?
So I think that's just a misunderstanding of the Amex card limit. So Amex they used to call them charge cards, but now they've rebranded them and they're calling them cards without a preset spending limit. So that's the platinum, the gold, and the green. And you can have up to 10 of those cards. So you can have up to 10 platinum or a mix of platinum, gold, and green. And then you can have 5 traditional Amex credit cards. That's like the Hilton Honors card, the Aspire card, the Marriott Bonvoy Brilliant, the Delta Reserve card. All those cards are considered credit cards, and you can have up to 5 of those. Now, those are soft limits. I know about people that have more than 7 Amex credit cards, and I know people that have over 15 Amex Platinum cards. So they're pretty soft limits, but that's kind of the numbers they might start slowing you down or cutting you off if you get over 10 charge cards or 5 Amex credit cards. Okay, Jamie, here's a question. The reader says, I have a question for you regarding the Amex Platinum. We've had the Amex Platinum for years. I have an additional card holder because when we opened the account, the annual fee for military spouses was not waived. So now that it is waived, I'd like to open my own account. Will being a card holder, an authorized user on my husband's account, affect me getting my own card and earning the bonus? Would it just be best for me to keep the authorized user card rather than closing it?
Yeah, we get situations like this a lot, either because of the older rules or people not understanding that you don't have to be an authorized user. It doesn't really affect, in my opinion, whether you keep your authorized user card or extra card holder card or not. You can immediately apply for your own card and get your own benefits, so double all the benefits. And then you can choose whether or not you want to close your authorized user account or not. It doesn't really matter. You can have it come off your credit report if you're worried about the number of accounts on there or things like that. For me, I just didn't want to give a space in my fancy credit card holder binder thing that we have. And so I closed my wife's authorized card holder account on my Platinum when she got her own for the first time. So I don't know, 50-50 on that one, but I think it's easier to just close it, simplify your life a little bit.
I'm the same way. Close authorized user accounts. It's just too many cards floating around. And no, you should be able to earn the bonus because you're your own person. This always blows my mind. Like, you are your own person. You have your own money. You have your own social security number. Like, Amex wants you as a customer. You specifically, not your husband, not your wife. Like, you are a person. Empower yourself. Go get your own bonus. Number 1, I just got married. What is the first thing that we should do in order to, thank you. What is the first thing we should do in order to get my new wife the credit card benefits? Just make sure she's in the MLA database after enrolling her in DEERS. I'll take that one, Jamie. Yes. Just check the MLA database. Okay.
DEERS first, though. That's very important. Yeah.
Yes. You have to be in DEERS and then go check the MLA database. do military points and miles only work if you live in the US?
No, you have options. You might have to, you can use APO address for most of them or traveling mailbox service like Earth Class Mail or traveling mailbox, but you can take advantage of it. You might have certain nuances to watch out for, like foreign transaction fees or what your bonus categories are, like U.S. restaurants versus not, overseas grocery stores for the commissary, or U.S. grocery stores on how it triggers. But for the most part, you can use all of it if you're stationed overseas. Anything to add on that one? How do you use this? Is almost the same, Spencer. But how do you use credit card perks while you live overseas in the military?
Send them to family and friends. So like on the Uber credit, for example, it only works stateside. So I used to get like a couple $100 of Uber credits. And I would just, when I was stationed in the Middle East, I would just call up family and friends as we're getting towards the end of the month and say, hey, you want lunch? Do you want dinner? Just let me know and I'll schedule an order for you in Uber. And Jamie, you'd be shocked how many people don't want free food. I mean, I think if you offered me free food, I would take it. So,
I mean, I'll take Thai tomorrow night.
Okay. Yeah. Let's actually, yeah. Hang on. Let me see how much credit, let me see how many credits I have. I'll look these up while we're going to the next question.
You can buy Tyler and me dinner tomorrow night. Okay. Here, this is a good one, Spencer. I've been sold on the Roth for so long, but these articles, and the reader listed some articles, make a good case for traditional instead. Is your recommendation in order to have some diversity, or why do you lean so heavily towards Roth? And I will say, you can almost find an expert that has an educated opinion on anything. So don't worry too much if you're on a different side of the aisle on this one. But Spencer, why is Roth a good thing for military families? At least a good place to start until they get more.
When they write those articles, nobody thinks about the military. Military pay is so low taxed. Like so much of your pay is allowances, which are literally untaxed benefits. Basic allowance for housing, overseas housing allowance, OHA, BAS, basic allowance for sustenance. Until you get out of the military and you get into the real world and you start paying real world taxes, you don't realize how much you're saving on taxes by being in the military. My effective tax rate, I don't think was ever over 10% in the military. And when I was stationed in Hawaii as a pilot, I think I was making like $160,000 a year or something insane. And this was years ago too. So it's probably even better now. A good case for traditional, recommend some diversity. No, save, if you want to make traditional contributions, here's what you do. Get out of the military, get a super high paying job, realize that you're paying way too much in taxes, and then start putting it into your traditional. While you're in the military, your pay is so low tax, you need to be putting that money in the Roth, especially if you're deployed, because you're earning tax-free money. It's growing tax-free if you get into a Roth, and then it comes out tax-free after age 59 and a half. So Roth, if you're in the military. If you're like an 05 and you're in like what do they call the National Command Region?
National Capital NCR, Capital Region?
Yeah, if you're in like DC or whatever and you're paying a lot in taxes, okay, yeah, I can see. Maybe you start thinking about traditional, but if you're in 03 or below, don't worry about it. Just go Roth. And the other thing too is like the traditional, yeah, it's great for diversification, yada, yada, but you get into RMDs, required minimum distributions, and you have all these other, we don't know what taxes will be like in the future. You know that you paid almost nothing in taxes on the money that you're earning in the military. Get that into a Roth, and the government has made this promise that they will not tax it in the future. And so far, they're sticking to that promise. I think that's the big argument to be made there.
So, on the episode about don't buy a house on active duty, I was a little softer. I'm going to flip the script, and I'm going to be more firm than you are on Roth. I think every military family should do Roth, period. Like, I don't care about mill to mill. I don't care about 05 or above. Like, I still personally am doing Roth. And you mentioned one reason, the RMDs. I don't want to have to deal with being forced to take money and being forced to pay taxes on money that I don't need to take out. I want to be able to leave as much as possible to my beneficiaries, kids, grandkids, siblings, like whomever it is. And when you have traditional accounts, you lose some of the control over that. I don't know what my tax bracket is going to be. It might be lower, it might be higher. I don't know what the laws are going to be. Like, I don't know. But by paying taxes on it now, I get that covered. And then also the people who favor traditional, I think you can prove the math either way. Like, I totally understand that some math equations would favor traditional in some cases. But I think what you miss from that is the behavior of you taking the tax savings for this year and investing the difference. And I think that's really where, if you did that perfectly, then the traditional might make more sense on paper. But I like the freedom of, I have no RMDs and I have no tax problem later. Now, it might mean that I'm missing an opportunity to take a no tax withdrawal. If I do financial independence, retire early, and I'm 45 years old and my only income is money coming out, or I guess it'd be 59 and a half at that point at retirement age, and my only income is taking out of a traditional retirement account, then I'm missing a chance to have an amazing tax benefit. But I think that's a very nuanced and very unique thing that not many military families are looking for. So I'm gonna side more with Dave Ramsey on this, and I think everyone should do Roth. And if you have another reason to do traditional, that's fine. But Roth is where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, just looking quick, the 2024 tax brackets, I would say 24% is probably like the marginal rate where you probably want to start thinking about traditional, maybe above, like definitely above 24%, right? When it cranks up to 32%. But the 24% bracket for married filing jointly goes up to $383,000 a year. I love this. Maybe I need to reevaluate, but I think you're right. I think even if you're dual mill, I mean, so much of dual mill income is because you're receiving the two BAHs, and that's not taxed. So it'd be extremely, I mean, maybe two doctors, but again, this is adjusted gross income. So
I think it's actually the modified adjusted gross, if I remember.
Modified, yeah. So there's so much. I mean, you start throwing the standard deduction in there, you start throwing, some child tax credit. Before you know it, like military pay is just so low tax.
Yeah. The effective tax rate is important. And we're kind of beating a dead horse here shortly, but it's not just what tax bracket you're in with how much you make it. If you make $100,000 a year, you're not necessarily taxed effectively at that tax bracket. And we probably need to do an episode, Spencer, to help kind of unpack the U.S. tax system and how the buckets work. And, if you go $1 into the 24% bracket, that doesn't mean all of your pay is now taxed at 24%. That's not how the U.S. tax system works. Your effective tax rate might be still 12%, even though you're quote unquote in the 24% bracket. So you really have to do some looking at your tax situation, but more than likely your tax situation is very low. And if you have a strong case for you want to have some traditional and some Roth, so you have options in retirement, especially if you're looking to retire early, I can totally see that being an argument, for the average military family. You know where I stand. Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back to the show. Hey, Spencer, I've heard about this free Amex Platinum card for military service members. Where can I go to learn more about this?
Great question, Jamie. I've got the Ultimate Military Credit Cards course at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. It's a 100% free email-based course, and I explain exactly how to verify your eligibility for credit card annual fee waivers with the Military Lending Act, or MLA, and the Service Member Civil Relief Act, or SCRA. The Ultimate Military Credit Cards course is a beginner's guide to travel hacking and opening up your first annual fee-waived credit card while you or your spouse serves in the U.S. military. There's no spam, no fluff, and the only emails you'll get from me are related to military credit cards. You can unsubscribe at any time, and there's zero cost to you to sign up. You can sign up right now for free at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. Again, militarymoneymanual.com/uniform Mike Charlie 3.
And now back to the show. Do you have any recommendations on keeping cards active with so many cards in my wallet now? Do you just let them sit until you get a warning that they will be closed, or do you put a small monthly charge on them to keep them active?
Okay, I'll say my piece, Jamie, and then you can jump in on this one too, because I think you used to have some strategies with this, but I just sit on them. I don't put any charges on them. I know some people have recurring monthly charges, but I like simplicity. So I've tried to get every single subscription onto either one of my Chase cards, or I think it's a Chase Freedom card, and then one of my Amex Gold card has all the other subscriptions. So now if there's a subscription benefit, like for instance, Wall Street Journal, New York Times can go on one of my Amex Platinum cards and I'll get, $20 off a month for that. Then, okay, yeah, of course I'm going to do that. But I don't want to pay 17 bills when it comes around. So I try to simplify as much as possible. I don't put spending, purposeful spending on any accounts. One thing I do, but which kind of happens naturally, is most of my cards have annual spend benefits. So for example, all the Amex Platinums, right, have a Saks Fifth Avenue credit, which means that I'm spending $50 every 6 months at Saks Fifth Avenue on every single card. So that kind of ticks the box right there. Really, the only company that's been kind of a pain in the butt about this is Chase. And it's been like, it goes years before they send me warning letters saying, hey, you got to put some spending on this card or we're going to close it. And then I do. So either I let them close it or I just go and, buy a $5 gift card on Amazon and boom, then it extends the timeline another 2 years.
Yeah, I don't stress about this one much. I will say if I notice that a card, like if I'm going through my YNAB budget app and reconciling my credit cards and all that, which I do every once in a while, and I notice it's been 6 months or so, maybe I'll donate some of my donation money that we do on a card. But my wife's Chase Hyatt card, for example, we never spend on that one. So it's like, here you go. Here's a $25 donation on this card every 6 months or whatever. But I've never gotten to notice that they're going to close a card if I don't spend. But I've definitely never gone more than a year without spending something on the card either. But all right, Spencer, I'm stuck in Amex pop-up jail. And we've had episodes about that to describe what that means. It basically means you're in a pop-up jail where you might not get the welcome offer if you do sign up for the card. So they said it's been 3 months. Should I just go ahead and open the card anyway or keep waiting to see if I'll get out of jail?
There's been a couple people on my website that have shared a couple like tips and tricks about getting around the Amex pop-up jail using the back button. So if you Google like back button trick for the Amex pop-up jail, that might work for you. But yeah, I wouldn't open the card. The welcome bonuses are extremely valuable. I would hold off and maybe move on to Chase for a little bit, Citi, Capital One, somebody else. Capital One doesn't really waive annual fees under MLA, but I would move on to a different card and then kind of circle back to that one. The argument could be made that the annual benefits are so great that it's worth opening the card without the welcome bonus. Like you could make the argument, I don't know, like a Hilton Honors, the no annual fee Hilton Honors card, right? Like maybe you're going to miss a $90,000 welcome bonus, but after a year, you could upgrade it to another Hilton Honors Aspire card and you're going to unlock free annual night certificates for the next 20 years of your life. That has substantial value. So I could see that argument being made. But I think just kind of at like, if we're not playing 3D chess here, we're just playing like credit card checkers, I would just hold off. Like the welcome bonuses are where most of the money is made. So you don't really want to miss out on welcome bonuses. So if you're getting the Amex pop-up, then there's a couple of tips and tricks on my website of how to get out of it. You can just Google Amex pop-up jail. It kind of sucks. It really did slow the game down in the last couple of years.
Hey, Spencer, I'm active duty Navy. I can't find anything online that will ensure that fees for Amex cards won't be charged after separating from service. What has your experience been? First of all, we talked about this on a lot of podcasts and you have an article about it, but can you just recap once again what happens or what are your options when you leave active duty?
Sure. So day you leave active duty, Amex, Chase Police aren't going to show up and throw a bill in your face. Wait until you're notified that the fee waivers have stopped. So they're just going to check the MLA database. I think they usually do it like once a month. And then Chase says you have 24 months until we start charging annual fees. Amex sometimes gives you a couple months, a year, a couple years. Sometimes they don't check. It's kind of all over the place with American Express.
You said Chase was 24 months notice?
Yeah. So I had 2 years before they started charging my Chase Sapphire Reserve annual fee, which they just did actually recently. And then wait until the fees are actually charged. So even though they've notified you that they're going to start charging annual fees, one thing that I noticed, especially like with American Express, is they charge me a really weird annual fee. So like, let's say the annual fee was like $550 a year. They might charge like $95 one year. I'm like, why did you even charge that? And then the next year they might charge like $450. And then the third year they might charge $400 or the full like amount. I'm not sure why that happens, but it does. So just be aware of that. And then if you are charging an annual fee and you're not getting value out of the card, just downgrade it to a no annual fee version of the card or a lower annual fee version of the card, or close the card. And it's not going to impact your credit score that much if you've been making on-time payments and you keep your oldest card open. There's really no rush. I've had 7 Amex Platinum cards. They actually just charged the annual fee on one of them. And so all I'm going to do is reach out to Amex through the chat feature on their website and say, hey, I haven't really used this card recently. Do you have any retention offers? Or can you waive the annual fee for another year? And if they say no, then I'll say, okay, I'd like to close the account. They're probably going to try to offer to downgrade it to a gold card or a green card. And I already have those. So probably just going to say, no, thanks. I just want to close
Make
the
sure
account.
you use all your annual or semi-annual benefits first before that conversation comes up. But so Spencer, just to clarify, you're saying that the annual fee can get charged, and then after it, you can still close the account, even though that there's now a $550 balance on your account for the annual fee being charged?
Yeah, absolutely. So for instance, my spouse just had the $550 annual fee charge on her Hilton Honors Aspire card, and she has 2 Hilton Honors Aspire cards. So we're going to keep one of them open because we do value Hilton Diamond status and the free annual night certificate and the airline fee. I mean, there's a lot of value with the Hilton Honors Aspire card.
Yeah.
But she doesn't really need 2 of them. So the one that got charged the annual fee, she messaged through the Amex chat app and said, hey, I'm not getting a lot of value from this card. And they said, okay, no problem. We can downgrade it to a Hilton Honors no annual fee card. And she said, yep, that sounds great. And they said, because you requested it, I think it was like 40 days after the annual fee was charged, they prorated it for the year. So of the $550, she got $500 back. And now she has a no annual fee Hilton card, which I'll probably end up closing. She'll probably end up closing in a little bit anyways.
I think if you do it within 30 days of the annual fee being charged, it should wipe the whole thing away too, especially if you can get it before the statement closes. Spencer, I think this is the last question. This is a really good one. Hopefully this doesn't turn into too long of its own episode, but I hear all kinds of values about how do I estimate my returns in my portfolio? 7%, 10%? How do I know what to use?
Oh, well, whatever number you need to get to. I mean, if you want $1 million by the time you retire, then crank those returns up. Now, I say that because we don't know. We have literally no idea what your investments are going to return, over the next couple of years. Now, that being said, let's say you have a certificate of deposit that you purchased in the last year, and it's a 5% return for 7 years. That's 5% for the next 7 years. I mean, you can prog that out. But let's say you've been buying, you've been listening to our podcast and you've been buying the C&S fund and your TSP, and you're wondering, okay, how are these going to perform over the next couple of years? We have no idea. We can look at historical records. We can look at how the S&P 500 has done since like 1929 to the modern day. But if you think about it, like so much has changed in our economy from 1929 to 2024. That's almost 100 years. And, we've gone from very rudimentary airplanes to, supersonic aircraft. We have the largest company in the world is a chip manufacturer. And if you went back even 50 years, you probably 50 years, but 100 years, definitely. If you said the largest company in the world is a chip manufacturer, they say, which one, Doritos or Lay's? That's...
I don't even think they had Doritos back then, probably.
So no, they didn't. That's another innovation right there. So all that being said, like, does historical returns make sense going forward? And, I always crack up because Vanguard publishes like these like 10-year outlooks, right? And they're always super pessimistic. They're always like, oh, we think like, the market was going to grow by 3%, real return over the next couple of years. And then it goes up like 10%, for 10 years straight. And then they put out another, study and they're like, oh, we're very pessimistic that like real returns are going to be, flat for the next 10 years. And then the market goes up 10%. It doesn't seem to matter like how many wars are going on. It doesn't seem to matter like how many recessions, how many global financial crises, how many oil embargoes happen. The market just keeps ticking along. But that being said, like even in the last 20 years, we have had a lost decade. Like if you put all your money in 1999 or 2000 and held it until 2009 or 2010, you would watch the value of your portfolio go down and then come back up and end up right where it started. So that is, that's kind of scary. There have been lost decades. That being said, like there hasn't been any 15-year period or greater that the US stock market has had a negative return, but 15 years is a really long time. So I would be cautious if you're estimating your returns. Play around with the numbers. What if you only get 3% a year? It's possible. Like there's been time periods where, the market hasn't gone anywhere. Like I said, like 10-year periods. I typically kind of use 7% because that's what the historical rate of return for the US stock market has been after inflation. So that's the historical return has been about 10%, and then inflation's been about 3%. So the real return has been about 7%. So that's how we get that number. And, it's also nice because rule of 72, a 7% return doubles every 10 years approximately. It's hard to know what the market's going to return for the next couple of years, but I think, stress test it. Like if you put in a 5% return, can you still reach your goals in a reasonable fashion? And then throw a 12% return in there and see like how crazy the numbers get after like 30 or 40 years. But I don't know. What else? What do you use, Jamie?
I like using 10%, but I will say my favorite calculator is on investor.gov, and they have a really good compound interest calculator. Like other calculators, this one allows you to give a variance range. So if you did a 7%, and then you can give a 3 or 2 or 1, so whatever, you can type in whatever variance. So I think I'm going to get 7, but if I don't, let me see what +3 and -3 looks like. So I like to use 10. I understand why people use 7, and the inflation adjusted numbers make sense. What's special about that to me is if you're using 7 as a 10 minus the annual average inflation of 3, what you're doing then is you're taking the calculation and basically using it in the purchasing power of today's value for your brain. So if you run the calculator for that reason at 7% and it says you're going to have $2 million, you actually might have something like $21 million. But because of the inflation in your brain, it's as if today you had $2 million. Those numbers are completely made up. I don't know if that inflation math adds up correctly or not, but it just, that inflation correction allows you to convert it to today's dollars and today's purchasing power in your brain. So either one you do, just understand the impact of inflation. But I do like playing with the numbers as well. But I typically will use 10 as my default with 7 as a backup.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to say, Jamie, was I tend to not use just like fixed rate of returns. And I really liked using Monte Carlo simulations because what you get with a Monte Carlo simulation is multiple portfolios, sometimes like 5,000 tests, sometimes 10,000 tests, and then they distribute, and then the computer looks and sees how they were distributed and breaks them into, like 10th percentile, 25th, 50th, 75th, 90th. And then you can kind of see, and I kind of look in that like 25th to 75th percentile, like the standard deviation range of, okay, if I had $1 million invested for 30 years in the US stock market, what would my expected kind of range of numbers be? And I can see like, over 30 years, it would be about $10 million or all the way up to like $38 million, right? And you're like, holy cow, like that's a lot of money. It just kind of like solidifies that even if we're in the 25th percentile, right? So there's 75% of all other 30-year stock market periods were better than the one that we're in. We still end up with $10 million nominal portfolio value, right? And it's a 3.2 million real value. So over a 30-year period, your money went up 3.2x. That's pretty good, right? That's kind of reassuring to me to be like, it's going to be okay. And that assumes no future investments, right? If you start throwing in like $10,000 a year or maxing out your Roth IRA every year, like the numbers get crazy once you start stretching it out over 20 and 30-year periods. So that's kind of how I kind of, like you said, Jamie, I kind of use that 7%, 10% number in my head, more so the 7% number, just for the reason that you gave, because it's easier for my brain to wrap around the fact like, okay, what if I had $1 million right now? How many coffees could that buy me? How much house could that buy me?
Not enough.
And yeah, only 7 Starbucks apparently. But it's easier for me to think about than like, if you don't inflation adjust it, right? You're like, wow, I'll have $20 million 30 years from now. And it's like, that's still only 7 Starbucks. So I think it's easier to just think about numbers in today's dollars. But what's kind of crazy, right, is like, so I've been saving and investing I entered the military in 2010, right? So about 14 years now. And yes, there has been a lot of inflation recently, and like clearly things are more expensive, especially if I think back like 15 years ago. But the numbers like in my head haven't changed that much. Like maybe housing is like twice as expensive, right? But it's not 3 times as expensive. And I think that's kind of like reassuring that, okay, if I keep saving and investing in the next 15 or 20 years, like again, like housing will probably double, and the house that I want, the $1 million dream house that I want, will probably cost $2 million. But hopefully my stock market portfolio isn't up 2x or 3x. Hopefully it's up like 5x or 10x. And I think that's where thinking about numbers, like investment numbers and FIRE numbers, and also kind of recognizing that like, so much of this is just completely made up, right? They're numbers on a screen. So if you're still listening to this, like, please stop listening to this and go hug your children, go hug your spouse, go live outside the spreadsheet. Let Jamie and me live inside the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I think you can nerd out on the percentages so much, but it's just an educated guess. There's no way to know, like you said. And don't let the uncertainty of, do I use 7% or 10%, or do I use Monte Carlo or not? Like, just keep investing, follow your philosophy, and every year you can update your net worth statement and see how you're doing. You don't have to decide when you're 21 years old exactly what you're going to do and never change it. You can update it. And that's the beauty of personal finance, is it allows you to make changes. And 1 year, if you decide you're above, you're saving faster than you thought you would, then you can reduce your savings if you want and take a bigger vacation. It's totally your choice, and whatever your family's goals are at the time.
I mean, Jamie, you said it on a lot of our early podcasts, but just do something. It doesn't matter if you project your investment returns at 7% or 10% or 15% or 2%, right? Like, that doesn't matter. Like, okay, yes, your model looks prettier when it's 7% or 10%, but what can you actually do? And that's, you can set a high savings rate, right? You can select low cost, automatic, diversified, simple investments. You can put money into your TSP. You can max out your Roth TSP. You can max out your Roth IRA. If you have a spouse and they're not earning income, but you're married filing jointly, you can contribute to their Roth IRA. So there's so many action steps that you can take. And at the end of the day, the model is just a model, right? Like, it's a look into the future, but it's almost completely worthless because so many things are going to happen between now and a year from now and 10 years from now and 30 years from now that you couldn't possibly projected. You couldn't possibly have even thought about. There's going to be business deals that you're going to be a part of. There's going to be windfalls. There's going to be inheritances. There's going to be sickness. There's going to be illness. There's going to be death. But there's also going to be joy. There's going to be new life. And there's going to be so many things that you just couldn't anticipate and you couldn't model. That didn't fit neatly inside the spreadsheet. So pick a reasonable number, have a justification for why you use that number, and then take a look at the model and be like, wow, that's great. I'm going to be Bill Gates when I'm 90 years old. I'm going to have $100 billion because it's going to grow at 20% a year. But just recognize that's probably not going to happen. So just keep on saving and investing and control what you can. Focus on what you can control. And don't really sweat the rest. Yeah,
that's great. Spencer, I love the mailbag episode. It's been a while since we did one. Thanks for the insight here. Listeners, we appreciate the 5-star reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening. We're almost to 300 reviews on Spotify and all positive 5 stars so far. Love getting the feedback and the questions from you guys. Like Spencer mentioned at the beginning, if you do have questions, you can email us at podcast@militarymoneymanual.com or shoot us an email or a DM, on Instagram. I'm total cringe now. Don't even know how to send DMs on Instagram. @Military Money Manual is the Instagram handle. And we appreciate you being here each week. Thanks for sharing the episode with your friend. And we'll catch you next time.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.